Hello everyone, my name is Jacqueline Posley and I'm the creator of Policy for the People. Today I have the absolute privilege of being here with 3 of our candidates of color who are running in the state of Vermont. They'll do their own personal introductions, but I would like to first, in true Hunger Games style, name their districts. So first we have the incumbent Representative Ray Garofano, who is running for re-election in Chittenden 23, House District. We have Brandolyn Bradley from my very own district, running for Caledonia, Essex, for the House of Representatives. And we have Esther Charleston running for Lieutenant Governor. If we could please start with Esther, with your personal introduction.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am Esther Charleston. I am Haitian American. I'm a mother. I'm a wife to 2 beautiful children and have 2 beautiful children. I'm a small business owner and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of Vermont. And yeah, so I have been traveling the state, really getting to know what the needs of the people are. I've been here, and I'm looking at the wrong camera. Hi! Well, it's so good to see you now. So again, wife, mother, small business owner. I am a mother and also the daughter to immigrant parents. I'm Haitian American and running for Lieutenant Governor, doing the work, really wanting to be a bridge to the people on the ground, to those in Montpelier. And so can't wait to share more.
Thank you, Esther. Brandolyn.
Yes, hi, I'm Brandolyn Bradley. I'm very excited to be a first-time candidate running for Caledonia, Essex, Concord, Kirby, St. Johnsbury. I am also a mother of a 5-year-old. Hi. I've spent my career in public health, starting as an AmeriCorps program member for 2 years, and I lived in Rhode Island. I have worked with victims of violence, young women in the juvenile justice system, and for the last 10 years in Vermont, I have been in healthcare. I currently oversee all non-clinical operations for the Frederick C. Benter Center for Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorders at the University of Vermont Medical Center. I am a patient advocate, and I'm very excited to be here. Additionally, I've just completed the 2025-2026 cohort at the Vermont Leadership Institute. Hey.
I think we have a few alumni at the table.
Hey, Jody. And that has been an incredible opportunity that really helped prepare me to make this run, diving into Vermont systems. In the last few years, I've also been on the board of directors of the Caledonia Food Co-op, which just opened its doors on Wednesday. And this has been an incredible opportunity for me to dive into the economic growth of the Northeast Kingdom and also learning our food systems, working with area food producers, and understanding a lot of the struggles that they're facing. So very excited to be here and talk more about my interests.
Thank you. Rep. Garofano.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's lovely to be here and to meet you and see you again.
Yes.
Like seeing friends and meeting new friends. I'm Representative Ray Garofano. I live in Essex and represent Chittenden 23. Which is Essex and part of Essex Junction. I am running for my 4th term, and I vice chair the Human Services Committee. I've always been on Human Services during my tenure at the legislature. I'm an immigrant. I'm also a mother. My husband and I are both immigrants to this country. He's Canadian. I'm Iranian, and our daughter is African American. So we really have this really interesting experience and perspective in living in Vermont as kind of outsiders, as Vermont being one of the whitest states in our country. Things have gotten a lot better since I moved here 21 years ago. I have been in public service my whole career in Vermont. I've worked for the state of Vermont for 21 years since I moved to Vermont. And that gives me a really interesting perspective as a legislator, where I can really think about how things are going to be implemented and really bring different ideas and focus to the legislature. So it's a really unique perspective, and I really encourage other state employees to really get involved. My interest in politics and public service started About 12, 13 years ago, when our school district was one of the first to pass an equity policy in Vermont. And to our surprise, there was opposition to that in our community. And that was really a wake-up call. You know, being a mother of a black child in Vermont, we couldn't understand how could anybody oppose something that would benefit everyone, not just my child, but everyone. So we got really, a small group of us got involved and did a lot of advocacy to ensure that that policy was passed and it became a model in the state. And through that work, I found my way to becoming a representative and have been honored to serve Vermont in Essex and Essex Junction for the last 5 years.
Excellent. Okay. So if we can begin with Brandolyn. What experience, careers, or degrees can you point to in your background that will directly inform your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I've mentioned, starting my service time as an AmeriCorps member in Rhode Island, I've always been very service-oriented, very committed to uplifting the lives of those around me. I came to Vermont, well, I'll back up. So I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, raised in Northern Virginia outside of Washington, D.C. I came to Vermont for college in 2004 to the former Green Mountain College in Poultney, Vermont. And in 2016, I returned. And so when I returned, I began working for the state of Vermont at Vermont Health Connect in eligibility. So I was exposed to this underbelly of the healthcare system and began to understand just how complicated it was, unnecessarily complicated it was, and not at the benefit of the people. As an eligibility specialist, I talked to Vermonters every single day about the struggles that they were facing and helping them figure out what their best coverage could be for them. And that was definitely a learning experience. When I transitioned over to the Binter Center, I dove into this world of movement disorders, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, and have been serving Vermonters living with a chronic illness, also trying to navigate a really complicated healthcare system. And so it has been through that experience, and also this past year, very excited that we were able to get the paraquat bill passed through the legislature. Woo! First in the nation to do it. Thank you, VPIRG. It was an honor to work with VPIRG and other national organizations to get this bill passed to keep people safe here in Vermont. Additionally, like I mentioned, I just completed the cohort with the Vermont Leadership Institute. Really allowed me to dive into Vermont systems, seeing how all of our systems are interconnected to each other. And it was during that experience that I realized, you know, we're at a really critical time in this state, and our systems are failing. And this one-off approach is just not working. It's not efficient, it's not affordable. And I've become, again, just dove into what can I do to make a difference? How are we addressing these issues? And really being honest about the root causes of them. Being in healthcare, you know, I definitely have my views on that system, but taking it further and seeing how between healthcare and housing and education and our food systems and our economy that we need a completely different approach to governing. And I believe that, you know, it really starts with the legislature and with the governor. And, you know, as a mom of a 5-year-old, I share the burdens that working families are facing in this state, the unaffordability. And so I'm seeking to bring to the State House a voice that is not heard often, and that's for working parents.
Beautiful. Thank you. Esther? So if you could tell us a little bit about your experience, careers, degrees that really inform your work?
Yes, so bachelor's degree in history and communication, and then 2 masters, corporate communication, and then teaching. I spent 10 years in higher education. Then I worked in public schools. I was an administrator, and then I started my own small business, worked as a consultant. And that gave me the ability to really help folks work towards hard conversations. And so in the work that I do, I sit and we talk about the things that feel so uncomfortable. So I do professional development, and I talk with towns and all of that informs my work. I sit with parents who are doing 504s or IEPs, trying to understand what's going on with their kids and helping them navigate the systems. And sitting with people who believe very different things. I had a client who came in with a Trump shirt on, and I had to help them navigate them getting in contact with their children again. And so putting aside my bias or anything I believe to really figure out, okay, how do we move forward and how do I help you move through this? And so my work has been all about facilitation, all about bringing people together. And that's my intention. And that's what I want to bring to the State House.
Beautiful. Rep. Garofano.
Yeah, so as an immigrant, I had to just back up a little bit. My personal story, just me, my mother, and my brother moved to the U.S., so we didn't have a lot of support. When we moved here, I was 12 years old. I told this full story the other night here when we were talking about kind of immigration and the anniversary of this country. So I started working at 16 to help support our family. And I was just, working any job I could, started with McDonald's, then a friend kind of referred me to a professional job at a travel agency. So, but what I learned through all the different jobs that I had without a formal education, post-secondary education, was that I had really good system level thinking and good leadership skills. So I started kind of believing that, hey, I can start, without a degree, I often started at the bottom of the company, but worked my way up very quickly and was project managing. And so I have a very diverse professional background, which I think is a gift, because you don't know what you want to be, and you can be many things. And I have done many different things. And when I found myself to Vermont, interestingly enough, I didn't have a college degree, couldn't even get an interview for a job, despite 20 plus years of professional experience working for really complicated project management positions. So I went to a temp agency, got referred to the state, and again, kind of worked my way up and found that human services was my calling at that time. So I had worked in human services and within the state of Vermont for the Attorney General's Office of Medicaid Fraud and Residential Abuse Unit, and then for DCF for the rest of my career in Vermont. And I eventually got my degree. My goal was to do it before my daughter started kindergarten, which I did, and she was there cheering me on when I got my degree, which was great. But I want to work for a system that doesn't require that of people. I think that we value certain things in a way that really diminishes people's skills and abilities. And I have worked within state government to change rules and policies so jobs can be applied for and people can qualify for positions that if they don't have a college degree, because you should look at a person for their totality of their experience, not just by a piece of paper that said what they accomplished. And I seek to kind of, I've worked for that at state government and as a legislator, and hope to kind of simplify those things as we move forward.
Beautiful. Yeah, that lived experience piece is always so special and often overlooked. So I appreciate that from a person whose background is also very eclectic.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
Eclectic is great.
Yes, it is. Thank you. That's what makes us special. So Vermonters have a variety of concerns about our futures, but undoubtedly at the top of everyone's list is housing and healthcare. We've talked a little bit about both, but in some capacity, Vermonters all share that same sort of concern. I'm wondering how you will make immediate change within the first 180 days of your term to directly impact Vermonters who are struggling with healthcare and or housing. And if it's okay, if we could start with Esther.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. As Lieutenant Governor, you don't bring new legislation. right? Your goal, well, the work is to preside over the Senate, is you have the tie-breaking vote. You help put senators on committees. And so what I would do is be an amplifier, be a person to convene, build the table that brings people together. And right now we have the HOME Act, so housing, I would focus on housing. We have the HOME Act that was passed into law in 2023. And so I would build the table, yes, I said build, build the table that brings together the builders, the towns, and also the folks who are conservationists who want to make sure that we protect the Vermont we know and love. And they usually talk past each other. Well, guess what? I would build the table where we're talking to each other, where we're figuring out a way. Because with the HOME Act, we can build in downtown areas. We can build in village centers. So why aren't we doing that? So bringing people together to have those conversations and see where and when we could get started would be the work that I would start in those 180 days.
Beautiful. Yes. Rep. Garofano.
Yeah, so I'm an incumbent, so coming back, hopefully, you know, I'll get reelected in November and get back to work in January. I'm going to talk about something that's not very sexy, but it kind of ties into a lot of this. Our state budget is very high for the amount of work and the amount of people we have in Vermont. And under the current governor's leadership, or lack thereof, I would say, for the last 10 years, our budget has continuously increased every year. And I would like us, in the beginning of my next term, to really focus on government accountability. And that does not sit with the legislature. That sits with the executive office. The executive office has a responsibility to ensure that the programs that we appropriate and we say, this is what we want to happen, they have a responsibility to ensure that those outcomes are being met. And as a state employee, implementing some of these laws, I can tell you when we passed Act 76, which was the child care bill, historic, and one of the first in the country to achieve what it did, which was really provide access for affordable child care to working families. We built in and we actually appropriated a small amount of money for an external firm to do accountability and monitoring of the investment, because it is a large investment and we are asking Vermont taxpayers to pay for that. It's not a lot, but we are asking them to pay for that. So if we're not meeting the goals of that legislation, then we shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be taking that money. And I feel like with healthcare, with education, with so many other pieces of state government, that has been happening over the years, and there hasn't been this systematic, like, vision setting goal by the executive office to say, these are the things we need to pay attention to, and this is where our investments need to go. And if we are not meeting the outcomes that were intended, then we need to look at the investments. And it is a partnership, as you said, Esther. When hopefully you all get elected and come to the building, because at the end of the day, you need to have 180 people to kind of agree, the majority of 181 people, because you need the governor to sign the bill after you got the 180 people. So it's really determining things that are priorities and focusing on things that have the best outcomes, especially where we are right now, which we've been in crisis mode for several years with our budgets and affordability crisis in Vermont.
Yes, thank you. Brandolyn?
Yeah, so touching a little bit on housing, and I know that this is a hot topic and there have been some attempts at this throughout the years. I'm really passionate about creating a housing bill of rights, establishing a framework that is protection for tenants and for landlords, accountability measures, reporting measures. I think it's very challenging. I am a renter, right? I'm a part of that demographic of Vermonters that is fighting to purchase my first home to raise my child in. So as a renter, You know, I understand the barriers that you have to go through in order to rent in this state, or pretty much anywhere, right? You have to have the finances, your background checks. There aren't a lot of protections in place for renters, and there aren't a lot of protections in place for landlords either. And so for me, I'm thinking about how do we build an infrastructure that is going to be thoughtful and inclusive and help build trust for people that are moving around the state, but also moving to the state. So when I'm thinking about my budget, where am I going to live, I'm looking at the rent, I'm looking at utilities, I'm looking at, you know, what does smart housing look like? What does energy efficient housing look like? And so I'm really passionate about trying to establish this Bill of Rights where we are agreeing on standards of living for all Vermonters, and that has to include landlords and property owners. And it has to include the ability to have housing inventory and tracking and proper reporting and understanding and putting in place the prevention of scams and price gouging, and really addressing our housing in a different framework, in a different perspective.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And as a renter, I support this message.
Okay. It's tough.
So I'd like to take a brief hiatus from our questions. I won't put you on the spot, Javen.
Please put me on the spot.
No,
This is
no.
all my fault because I'm sitting in my office.
No
it's
worries.
like 4:55.
No
and I'm
worries.
Like,
Wait, virtual? This is in person in a beautiful studio that I've actually never been in.
Yes,
So I
welcome.
thought this was virtual, and I'm sitting there like,
No
so that's
worries.
my fault completely.
No worries at all. We
I
are
zoomed over here.
and we're thankful for that and glad to have you
Following
here.
the speed limit too.
Yes. You have no choice with the number of traffic devices in this town. So I did want to say this is Javen Sears for those who are joining us from home. Javen Sears is the only Republican on our panel here today. We have Randallin, who's independent, and we have our two Democrats here at the table for quite a diverse conversation in many ways. So Javen, if you'd like to take about 20 seconds
Sure.
and tell the folks at home what district you're running for and a little bit of a personal introduction.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, my name's Javen Sears. I'm running for the Vermont State Senate of the Chittenden Southeast District. I'm from South Burlington, Vermont ever since I was 8 years old. I was born in St. Albans, and so I graduated from South Burlington High School, class of 2020. I've been at UVM studying business and also part of the Lawrence Debate Union that's in their 126th year. And I've been learning all about politics and how we can help, be able to afford for people like me, young people, to be able to live here and grow up here, because we call this place home, and we always want to call this place home. And unfortunately, it hasn't been necessarily that so much. So hopefully I can be able to bring some change to that as well.
Excellent. So we will move on with our questions, if that's all right with everyone. So this question is especially hot topic and quite an emotional one. So please take your time. No, I'm just kidding. So we've watched ICE grow its presence across Vermont and across America. What will you do during your term to protect Vermonters of color when we work, go to school, and navigate everyday life? One caveat that I like to put in with this question is that typically people think that this is somehow separated by where you're actually from, but in actuality, there's a lot of racial profiling involved. And so just if I can insert that own personal piece as a person who is American and born in Mississippi, many of hundreds of years worth of Mississippians, and facing a lot of that same fear that people who come from different backgrounds face. I just wanted to insert that for Vermonters. So if we don't mind, if we could start with Rep. Garofano.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about what we achieved last legislative session, which I feel really proud of and really good about how things landed, even though we didn't get everything we wanted, which I'll talk a little bit about as well. So we passed legislation to keep folks safe in sensitive areas, so houses of worship, hospitals, schools. So ICE is not allowed in those spaces. We also funded 2 positions at Vermont Legal Aid to help immigrants when, and as we know, this federal administration just continues to increase their efforts against immigrants. And being an immigrant, I just find it appalling. And I think just today there was an incident in Middlebury with immigrants that were apprehended by ICE. We had the incident in Texas. It is, I literally just before this, I think the tragedy in Texas was the 8th death under this administration of an immigrant in this country. I mean, let that settle in. 8 people have died under this administration needlessly, and that I don't think includes the 2 Americans that were murdered in Minnesota. So, you know, you said it's emotional. It is certainly an emotional, and I feel it viscerally being an immigrant in this country. I was undocumented, have that experience of looking over my shoulder and could not imagine what our, you know, immigrant neighbors are going through right now. Where we failed was S208, and that is, it was a constitutional issue, as we all kind of heard in the news, and that is working its way through the courts. It's unfortunate, but we've already have my friend Karen Dolan, who represents Essex Junction, has already reintroduced that bill with slightly modified language. So we will take it up as soon as we go back in January. And we'll continue looking at other efforts, looking at what our partner states are doing, neighboring states are doing, maybe collaborating and partnering with them on legislation that can help protect our immigrant neighbors.
Beautiful. Thank you. Javin?
Sure. You know, I think that this is definitely a hot topic. Sorry I'm from South Burlington, so we just had a recent ICE, you know, conflict that happened a few months back. And so I really think that, first of all, I do support our law enforcement, and I do think that ICE as a department is in essence a good thing. And I think they have one of the hardest jobs in the world when it actually comes to enforcing this. Because if you look at in the recent past years, obviously during the Biden administration, this is, you know, numbers dating back to 6 million people, you know, coming across our borders, you know, illegally. And I think that we do need to have at least, you know, an enforcement agency that is trying to at least protect American citizens, you know, Vermonters in general across the country, and it's not an easy job. And I think that, you know, these certain attempts that have happened, that have kind of flared up across society, social media, et cetera, you know, unfortunate, and it unfortunately shouldn't be happening. But I do believe though that they're doing the best that they can to be able to do it, you know, efficiently, effectively. I don't think their intent is to, you know, harm people or to do it illegally or to go after people who, you know, shouldn't even be targeted. For example, like American citizens. So I think they do have a tough job, and with that comes, you know, being said, I think that if they can be able to do that effectively and, you know, across the board, not holistically, but just to be able to at least say, we're going to do an effort to protect American people, American citizens. And again, if we can, and I think the, you know, Trump administration at least has done a fairly decent job at it. I think they could do a better job in general. And it's just not an easy thing. So if you have any follow-ups, I'd love to definitely, you know, clarify my points on that though, for sure.
I don't think I'm in the let me say this, in my policy for the people hat, because those who are watching and know me know that I have many of an opinion. But in my policy for the people hat, I am not here to challenge you. I'm here for the people to hear you.
Absolutely.
And so they might follow up.
Yeah, well, follow, please. I'm always, you know, because,
Excellent.
and I think Vermonters also are like, you know, some of the nicest people out there. And I've been hearing so many questions about this, especially me running as a Republican, which is, you know, uncommon, especially here in Vermont and South Burlington, where I'm from. So I just hope to give my perspective, do the same thing that you're doing as well, likewise, and just try to speak the truth into public policy. So, yeah.
Love it. Brandolyn?
Thank you. So first, I will say that I do not believe that anybody is illegal on stolen land. And I think that what we are seeing is a lack of humanity and thought for how difficult it must be to try to go to a different country in search of a better life. I have the utmost respect for immigrants, for migrants, for anybody who is willing to put their life on the line for their family to be safe, happy, and healthy. I think that this is a really intense topic for many reasons. And I think one of the key things for me is helping people understand and view each other as human beings that are worthy of respect and dignity and life regardless of their circumstances. So I have hopes that I would be able to engage my community in that dialogue so that we can connect with our humanity and see each other as worthy of respect.
Thank you. Esther?
Well, this is personal for me. My parents are, again, immigrants, came here for a better life, raised the 5 of us, and they did a good job, if I do say so myself. And because of their bravery, I've been able to create a beautiful life for myself and for my family. And so as Lieutenant Governor, I want to amplify what we are doing well. Happy to hear that the legislature has made hospitals, schools, as well as churches, a safe place. So we want to amplify and let folks know in those communities that, hey, these are safe places. But we also want to, as Lieutenant Governor, really talk about what's not going well and really making sure that folks know Vermont is a safe place and all are welcome, and we have to create that. And so I would use the office to amplify what's going well and then to really put on the stage of what's not going well and make sure folks are paying attention. So yes, it was heart-wrenching to see the news today of folks picked up. I grew up hearing stories of my mom when she was in the in-between working at a bakery, and remember somebody would yell out, "Immigration's coming," and people are running. Recently, TPS was taken away for over 300,000 Haitians who came here legally, did everything right, and then at a stroke of a pen, it was taken away. I just learned that it was extended till the 24th, but you know, people are still at work. But people are doing it the right way, quote unquote, and still being asked to leave and start over. So that's not okay. So making sure we create a space where all are welcomed, because folks who are working on the farms, you know, who are in that in-between space. I worked in schools where children were literally terrified, crying all day, not able to pay attention in school because of the fear that ICE was coming to pick them up. So our teachers, what do they do with that? How do they help them? Families, what are they supposed to do? So creating a space, Vermont being that space where folks can be safe and we can draw the line, is really important, and I would use the Office of Lieutenant Governor to make sure that line is clear and that we're amplifying what we are doing well.
Well said, all 4 of you. Thank you. So I like tangible, measurable goals. That's like very important to me in life, and I know that there are a lot of voters who say either they don't vote because they hear this thing from politicians during their campaign and then it doesn't happen. So this next question is a little bit built on that. As a voter, I like to think of myself as just a voter, like I'm just a constituent. And so can you please name 3 measurable goals voters can count on you to chase tenaciously throughout your term? And if we could please begin with Brandolyn.
So I've already mentioned my housing bill of rights. So I have 3 other ones other than that. AI data centers. I really struggle with this. I think that having a moratorium and halting construction of AI data centers in Vermont is pretty important. I also think addressing the lack of supports for our farmers and our food producers. I live in a district, rural district. I have a dairy farmer, and I'm immersing myself into this world of understanding the struggles that our food producers and our farmers are facing. So one thing I really want to be able to do is to address the lack of supports and resources for our farmers. And then economic growth. So, which means taking a really hard look at our building and construction regulations, looking at innovation. How are we bringing innovation into the state while also honoring our landscape and the brand that is Vermont, but also growing our business and growing our economy.
Excellent. Javin?
Yeah, I think first thing, I think in my district, the biggest problem is property taxes. And, we've seen an increase of 40% over the last 5 years. And one of the things I think we should do is to reduce that burden. And I think to go off that, a similar point is, I think we have to reduce property taxes. We have to reduce taxes in general. And some of the ways that I think can be done that in place is, one, we have an education system that, in my district, we're paying $73.9 million, for our school budget. And a lot of times we don't see the outcomes necessarily of what that money is actually going towards. We're seeing a decrease in the amount of kids that are actually in our schools. Right now we're at 72,000 kids that are in our K through 12 education system, a public school education system, where, if you look at just in 2003, for example, we had 103,000. So not only what does that show? It shows, well, are people actually okay in line with what's going on in our education system? Are they comfortable with it? Do they feel like they're actually getting the benefit of the doubt? Or, or are people just feeling like they are maxed out of this market in Vermont right now because they can't afford to live here? I was just reading the UNH article that recently came out, not too long ago, and it was saying that 4 out of 10 people feel like they can't afford to live here, and they don't want to, because it's just unbelievable that you can't be able to afford to live here. So that's definitely number one. I think number two, I really do agree with this executive order that the governor just came out with when it comes to healthcare, because I think in a lot of different industries across the board, it's just like any business, I think you need competition. And in our healthcare system right now, we didn't allow single-payer healthcare to get in. Now we're going for, universal healthcare is definitely being promoted more on the Democratic side of the ticket. But on the Republican side of the ticket, I think that we need to do increased competition so that, our UVM Medical Center isn't the only one that's in place that is actually dealing with healthcare. And the fact is, it's just becoming more and more of a government-run healthcare system instead of a actual healthcare system that's going to benefit Vermonters in general across the board. And that's what I hope that can actually end up happening. And I think that's a good first step, this executive order that came into place to do that. And it actually helps me because of the age-based targeting, where young people can actually come into the market and have opportunity for healthcare. And number three, I think this is really important into the day of politics that we live in. We live in a hyper partisan culture of politics and politicians. And I'm not a politician. I don't try to look like one. I guess I do with the suit on, and the tie. I didn't try to definitely do that. But to be nonpartisan, I think that it's really important that we actually actively participate in civic debate and discussion, and that's healthy civic debate and discussion. When I was at UVM and I was debating for the Lawrence Debate Union, we're in our 126th year to really prominent debate team. We really got to focus and learn about what is actually civic debating and how do we actually come up and present our arguments for what are our policies, how do we want to discuss it. And I think in the legislature right now, the way our legislature works, and I'm sorry to be rambling on, but when things get prioritized in our legislature, it's only the things that are the people who are the chairs of those committees, which are majority run by Democrats for the last 40 years, no offense. And the fact is, I think we do need more balance in our legislators, so people in those committees actually have more diverse opinions, and that there can be more argument and more discussion and trying to find the truth. And I feel like for my constituents that I'm trying to represent, a lot of people, one, are feeling the pressure of those property taxes and of the tax burden, sales burden, everything. But the fact is, they don't feel like the policies are actually being advocated for that they want to see in the legislature. So, when I come and I speak, I'm talking for them, I'm talking for me, I'm talking for my family, and also young people. So those are kind of my three commitments. So 1, property taxes, 2, healthcare reform, and then 3 is we just got to be good people. So.
Excellent. Esther?
Well, like I mentioned before, the HOME Act is already in place. So as Lieutenant Governor, really just building that table, making sure the right people are sitting there, whether it be the town, the builders, and the folks, the conservation folks who want to make a difference and stop talking past each other, but talk to each other so we can get building faster. And now I think about education. Right now, the legislature, they have a formula going into place. And so my work would be to make sure that students are centered in that formula, making sure that special education is covered and that teachers' voices are at the table as well and are heard. And of course, healthcare. People are feeling the pressure. As I traveled the state, one of the stories, one of the families I've met, 3 of the children are on Dr. Dinosaur, and then the parents have no insurance. I mean, I wish I could say that they're the only family that's experiencing that, but that's not the case. A lot of folks are feeling the pressure in that way. So making sure that parents know what avenues they have so that the emergency room is not their first go-to and there's preventative care. So universal health care, yes, is something that I would fight for as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, so to answer the specific question, and I want to remark on some of the other things that were said, because I'm the only one that has been surveying that has passed some of the bills that we're talking about. So I've been committed to government accountability. I talked about this earlier, but we have not been able to pass a bill. It's been 4 years, and we just keep hitting barriers. So I'm hoping to bring back a bill next year to really have a, again, I think this should be in partnership with the governor. Unfortunately, we don't have that under this leadership right now, but I'm hoping to bring back a bill that will have the Joint Fiscal Committee support a legislative committee that will look at really the big investments that we're making, so we can look at the measurable data of the improvements, right? We need to make sure that the investments that we're making are actually producing the outcomes that were desired. Another commitment of mine, which has been disappointing, is helping really low-income Vermonters. The Reach Up program supports many Vermonters, help them. It's a 2-year program, and it helps them kind of bridge to that next step in life. And unfortunately, in Vermont, and this is complicated, but it's so important, so bear with me for a second. We determine what a basic needs is, and currently in Vermont, we're using like 3-year-old data, numbers for that. And then we say, let's say you need $2,000 for a family of 3 to meet your basic needs in Vermont. Then we cut that in half, and that's what we give to Reach Up families. And every year, we are told by the administration that this is because of budget pressures. For me, I cannot fathom a family of 3 living on an average of, usually it's about $850. That's all they get. And to think that, I have colleagues in the legislature on my committee that see that as a handout to these families. And for me, and data has borne this out, when you give low-income families money, they know how to spend it in the right way. They know how to make the decisions for their families. And I trust those families to spend that money wisely to help improve their lives so they are not dependent on that assistance anymore. So that's been something that I've been working on for years. I will continue banging the drum and letting people know that it is not fair and it's not right. And then I'll talk about a little bit what I have helped pass, which I led a bill that introduced pay transparency in Vermont, and that was 2 years ago. And I'm really proud of that, because now when you go look for a job, it tells you what the pay range is. And that really helps women and people who have a lower level of education maybe, or people who, immigrants who may have that fear of authority, may not want to ask or negotiate. So it really helps equalize the playing field. So I'm really excited about that. And then I just want to mention, healthcare. Everybody talks about healthcare, and I think the governor had an unbelievable opportunity this year with S-190, and that veto honestly was heartbreaking, because that not only would it have lowered healthcare costs for Vermonters, tangible, real money, it also would have had a huge impact on property taxes, immediately. And that was vetoed, and we have a post-session executive order that kind of introduces this whole new thing that, I really wish that we had a partner on the 5th floor that would bring these ideas to us during the legislative session, so we can, maybe there is good information there, maybe there's good policy there, but again, we're not in session, so it's really hard to do that partnership right now.
Understood. Thank you. So we are running against time. We have about 10 minutes remaining, but I have individual questions for you all, if you don't mind. If we could start with you, Brandolyn. So voters in our region struggle heavily. I know, sorry. Voters in our region struggle heavily with the issue of inaccessible health care. And I say our region, for those of you who don't know, I'm also living in the Northeast Kingdom, so speaking from firsthand experience here, but also speaking for our community. So from the lack of physicians and specialists to our struggling volunteer emergency services teams, Vermonters in the NEK usually face difficulties while trying to access basic and emergency care. Can you talk a bit about how you'll fight for healthcare reform on the state level?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So first, I want to acknowledge that the Binter Center, I have a statement here, that the Binter Center is a part of the University of Vermont Medical Center. My position is fully funded by private funds through an endowment. So my opinions and ideas are my own and do not reflect that of the Binter Center and their staff. So,
Always good to clarify.
yeah, I mean, you gotta be careful. So I think that most people would agree that our healthcare system is expensive, it's inefficient, and it's being run into the ground by failed policies, a corrosive infrastructure, and like constant finger pointing. It's somebody's fault. There are many factors that are contributing to our high healthcare costs, from insurance prices and coverage, the lack of providers, high prescription costs, and we have a reactionary healthcare system. So it's not focused on prevention, it's reacting to illness. I think an aspect of our healthcare that contributes to the dysfunction is how it is regulated in the state. So I think, I take a bit of issue with how the regulatory body is appointed by the governor. It becomes really politicized. And I consistently see outcomes that do not benefit patients. They don't benefit people. They don't actually lower the cost of anything. I live at this intersection of patient and provider care. I work with providers. I know that they are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Their productivity being called into question is just outrageous, and I find personally offensive. I can speak for how hard my team of physicians works. And if you are somebody who has just been newly diagnosed or living with a chronic illness, the last thing that you want is to have your physician running out the door because they have more patients to see. So I think addressing the provider shortage is of utmost importance. We at the University of Vermont Medical Center, along with other hospitals, whether it's NVRH, Gifford, et cetera, we are all struggling to recruit physicians to come to the state. Housing affordability, property taxes, all of these systems that are failing are contributing to our recruitment efforts. So addressing the need for more physicians, I think, needs to be of the utmost priority when thinking about efficiency and affordability. I think that the executive order that happened earlier this week, I think that's a prime example of attempting to appear like trying to make progress really conveniently during an election cycle, while also knowing that it doesn't have legs. Age-based care is not appropriate, and it shifts burden from one vulnerable population to another vulnerable population. I think at this point we're all a vulnerable population in this state because we're all paying exorbitant amounts for our health care. So I think that, having universal health care in theory sounds really great. It does require more people to be paying into the system. We don't have that right now. I'm very interested in a regional universal healthcare system. So how are we leveraging what we have in Vermont, in the region, in New England, to create a regional healthcare system?
Beautiful.
Yes.
Esther, you are both an educator and a mother.
Yes.
Based on your professional and personal experience, can you elaborate on how you'll help structure the conversation on redistricting and education issues in Vermont to ensure fair education for all?
Beautiful question. And as I think about being in the education system, being a mother, and what's important as we think about districting, I believe, as Lieutenant Governor, making sure that communities are with us as we make hard choices. I love what the legislature has done as far as putting together a team to really figure that out, but then it's going back into the local communities to get voted on, and I think that's so important. So what I would do as Lieutenant Governor is make sure that folks in the community understand what it means and what it looks like, and doing sessions together, including students also, and making sure their voices are heard, and teachers as well. So making sure that everybody's at the table who's being affected would be the work that I would do, and the patience for the folks who may not come to that meeting, but meeting folks where they are, whether it be at the schools, after school, or what have you, making sure that they're a part of the conversation, even if they feel left out. So that would be my work.
And if we can split our last 5 minutes, I have a question for both of you. Rep. Garofano, your bills usually focus heavily on vulnerable populations, like Vermont's youth and those who are experiencing homelessness. Can you name a bill that did not pass during the last session, but you hope to revive with more support?
I already talked about this a little bit. So the Government Accountability Bill, which was 867, did not pass, and it was disappointing. We'll bring that back. Revised version of it. It was primarily due to funding issues, so I think we have the policy right, at least for this time. I'll also talk a little bit about the process, because I mentioned earlier, you need a lot of people to agree to get a bill passed, and then for the governor to sign it. So when things don't move forward, or they either die in the legislature or they get vetoed, I really think it's important for legislators to really have this mindset of, we got to keep going. It's incremental progress, and we had our homelessness bill that got vetoed last year, and we brought it back and we passed something even stronger. And that was heartbreaking, that veto, because it really could have helped a lot of people a lot sooner. But again, it's like really having faith that this is slow work, you got to be patient, and each year you got to keep at it and work at it, and you will get results that way.
Absolutely. Javin, in your platform, you mentioned lowering taxation in Vermont often. You also mentioned that the state should do so by, quote, reforming education and using common sense. Can you describe how you will, quote, encourage economic development, workforce growth, and smart housing solution with those things in mind?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here, and all of you as well, and being here in Vermont and representing, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here on the panel in front of everybody. To answer your question, how will what are the things that I think Vermont should be focusing on? I think we do need to focus on our workforce development. If you look at our workforce right now, it has been depleting in numbers, and I think we kind of see that when we look at young people who are trying to get into these tech schools when they're in high school, and that only 40% of them are actually being accepted into places that go to like Essex Tech or Burlington Tech, and it's because they don't have a big enough enrollment. So I think that's a big thing that we should focus on, because right now trades is incredibly important for especially younger folks, and it's honestly they're paying so much too that we see so many people that are trying to get into that, and I think our education system, when it comes to our education reform, I think needs to reflect that. Whether that's school specialization, or I also like to talk about, I think school choice needs to come into the conversation, whether that's through ESAs or also allowing for school choice between public schooling, because right now, like if you live in South Burlington, you got to go to South Burlington School, and you don't have the option to go to CVU or MMU or whatnot. So we kind of have this model right now in our education system where you're forced to go wherever you grow up, which is, I think, really unfortunate and not actually equal in representation for those kids, because one school might not be so specialized in one thing, or et cetera, or not offer the same programs. And right now, why it's become so bloated is because, well, we have 119 school districts. If you look at a state like Florida, they have 52 school districts. So we have to, make every different school district huge in numbers. But when it comes to like school consolidation, for example, what the governor is actually trying to focus on, it was like, a major thing that he was trying to get done in this past legislation. But, on the other half of the legislature, they didn't really want to, have the conversation about it. And I get it, when kids have to drive, an hour, families, maybe in some situations, but we're talking about voluntary mergers where, school systems can buy into this or not. But to go kind of back to my point is what I'm kind of trying to say is the fact is, when it comes to school specialization or school choice, when I talk about school specialization, I think school programs need to start getting a little bit more specialized when it comes to like STEM education, for example. And when I talk about, school choice, people get a little afraid of that, like, oh my God, school choice. I just think school choice is allowing the opportunity for people and families, the parents, the moms, the dads, the sons, the daughters, to be able to choose where they want to go to school and what education system do I want to have in place. Because otherwise, families here, either you're stuck or you have to leave. And if you're stuck, you're forced to go to this certain, because you can't afford to go to Rice, or you might not get into a private school or a charter school. We don't have charter schools, but a tech school, whatnot. And right now in Vermont, just in general, if you compare us to other states like New Hampshire, again, I mentioned Florida, or anywhere in even the New England, in Massachusetts, they have #1 education system. The fact is that we need to be able to allow for families to go where they want. It increases competition among schools, and those school programs can, start to really diversify and be more effective for the young people that are getting in. And we have unbelievable chronic absenteeism that is going through our schools, meaning kids are missing more than 20% of the days they spend. That's like you're missing a Monday every day, which I would love to miss Mondays, but I just think that we're not prioritizing, I think, the benefit of the family, which I think really our country, our state, and Vermont was really built on. And going back to those foundational tools, I think is what we need to do, especially in the legislature. So I hope to keep advocating for that. I know my 5 minutes are up here, but again, I just want to thank you for this opportunity and thank all of you for allowing me to be here. So.
In the spirit of thanks, I would love to thank Town Meeting TV. It's not every day in Vermont that you have the opportunity to have a platform on which you can speak freely, whatever side of the spectrum you lie on. So I'm
That's
really
right.
thankful to, exactly, I'm really thankful to Town Meeting TV and everyone who made this possible. If you're watching from home right now and you're interested in something more, please reach out, please let us know, please like, please share. In the last 10 seconds, if we may, we're a little over time. Just very briefly, if you could give either social media or your website.
raygarofano.gov.
CharlestonforVermont.com.
Brandolin for Caledonia.com.
JavinSears.com. I made it myself.
Me too.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to be here, and we're excited. Thank you.